Hello everyone, welcome back. I'm Lino Farah, the host of Cribwolf Talks. Cribwolf Talks focuses on social organizations that offer vital and needed services to members of our community, seen as vulnerable and underserviced, which includes individuals with developmental disabilities, often referred to as a silent minority. Waitlists indicate that many people with diverse abilities require deeply affordable housing. Having said this, a roof over their head does not provide them with the fullness of life they deserve. People with diverse abilities require access to support services, whether 1 hour a day or 24/7, employment, healthy foods, community engagement, and to experience inclusivity. On this part 2 of our 3-part series on Kerr Street Mission, located in the heart of Oakville, Ontario, we will continue our coverage of the valuable services provided by the Kerr Street Core programs to members of the Oakville community. Let's now join my conversation with Gary O'Neill, the Executive Director of Kerr Street Mission, on the importance of community and hear about their work they are doing with the youth development and family services programs. Well, that's wonderful. I mean, I totally agree with you. I mean, there's been so many studies right now with regards to, social media and internet and social platforms. And how does that take away from our skills building for these youth development? There's many people argue that it's been very favorable, the social platforms and the internet, but at the end of the day, what does it do to a person's skill set, right? How to be able to social interaction is critical, not only when they graduate, but into the workforce. So, so what you're doing here is, I just love it, because that gives the ability to get away from those things, those devices, as I said. We're all parents, we know that. Everywhere you go, you see them on it constantly. At every degree, they start at 5 years of age now. So I like what you're doing here. And of course, there's more to the story here. You have the family services, which is key. And you mentioned something very important to me when I was here during the tour, that a healthy family unit creates a stronger community. Can you elaborate on that and then how that ties into here?
Yeah, I remember a few years ago seeing an article out of one of the papers in the US, and it was from a professor, and he actually got a lot of criticism for this comment. And he said one of the #1 solutions to poverty would be parents committing to making their marriage work. And so, if it doesn't matter what income you make, if you split your family and you have to have 2 houses and all those costs, it's difficult. Then if you're, in a lower income, they split that income and they can't possibly make ends meet. If we look at a family unit and we see, a healthy marriage, and if dad is, unemployed or struggling in a bad job, or a bad situation, and he gets support from his spouse, and vice versa, or if children are going through a health risk, or even if it's a period of time when, there's behavioral issues and they're pushing back. I was one of those kids. Most of us had our period of time when we pushed back. It's so helpful when there's supportive parents, and when kids are seeing parents work through difficulties and some of the struggles in a healthy way. And so we look at how do we support a family, and sometimes it's just taking the stress off, right? I was fascinated a number of years ago when some statistics came out about refugees and newcomers. The divorce rate or separation rate within 3 years is very, very high, significantly higher than what you would expect. And if you dig into that, the difficulty getting a job, the difficulty getting a fulfilling job, difficulty getting a job that pays all the bills, causes stress, causes dissatisfaction, which connects into the relationship, and these marriages and families end up splitting apart. So again, for us, back to food security and the kids programs, to be able to be here and take some of that pressure off, but also to encourage them, to connect them into counseling if that's what they need, just to be supportive in sort of a comprehensive way to help those families is really, really important. And we see it carried out so many ways, in terms of even the time spent with children, so they're not being babysat by a video game, or movies, right? Parents, I don't know how single parents do it. You know, you work, you come home, you're making dinner. How do you have enough time, never mind the energy, to be able to, you know, sit in bed at night and read your kids stories? And the truth is, a lot of times they don't. And so there's a lot of what we can do that might not seem directly related to, you know, helping a family stay healthy, but it takes a lot of pressure off. And then there's other pieces where there can be encouragement and support where there are issues, and help them deal with those issues and get to a healthier place and a stronger family.
Really, what you really do is stand corrected. You bring the family here. The family, what's going on in your life, right? Yeah, I mean, you start there because there's so many variables. I mean, our program is focused a lot on caring for people with disabilities. You know, varied abilities is a term we like to use in our program, and of course all the studies we've done. And when I was writing my book, The Waiting Game, I also met with so many families, and so I see your point. I mean, but you introduce another component is that whether it's a single mom or a two-partner household, but caring for an individual with varied abilities, regardless whether it's visible or invisible, adds another layer of stress, right, and obstacles and all that, and you know, so that parent needs to also, you know, have some sort of relief, respite, conversations, right? Because there's income issues, there's programs, there's support, lack of support services, housing, which we really haven't gotten into, but we will shortly. So that adds another layer. So bringing a family like you do to the table, I understand there's all kinds of areas. I mean, we talked about debt service, for example. How does a person deal with rising debt and credit and bills and things like that, right? How does that? How do you relieve that stress and deal with it? So I love what you're doing here, by the way.
I just say, like, you know, we can easily forget the importance of community. As people, our natural inclination when we're struggling, so whether it be finances or marriage or even difficulty with kids, our first inclination is not to take a step forward and ask for help. It's to take a step back out of embarrassment. And there's a fascinating study that came out from Harvard. It's actually the longest study in history. And they looked at happiness and longevity, and they wanted to see what the factors were, you know, the most critical factors for happiness and longevity. And there was one factor for both that, happiness and longevity, that stood so far above everything else that it was like, this is obvious, this is the number one thing. And it was healthy, meaningful relationships. Right? So people in relationships and communicating and feeling like, you know, they matter and they're loved and there's, you know, care and love for someone else has a profound impact on us. So that's part of why we have the community meals.
Nice.
And that's part of why we believe it's so important to, you know, we have kickboxing one night, which someone volunteered. They were a kickboxing instructor, wanted to do it. And initially we said yes, only because the gym wasn't being used, so why not? Later we realized it's actually nothing to do with the kickboxing. It's to do with the little community of women that love getting together, and they have a break and they have some fun and some laughs, and you know, it strengthens the community.
Wonderful.
But, you know, I think about, like, someone asked me recently, are you guys biting off more than you can chew with your family programs? And you know, food security, the number of people that have coming. Pre-COVID was 407 people we were providing for a week.
Wow. So
far this year, it's closer to 1,200 people a week. So, you know, really threefold. Our Choose Fresh program, which is where we purchase the produce and proteins, if we look at our budget, how much it went up last year and what will need to go up this year, it'll be probably an additional $200,000 spent. So the question from a donor, very successful business person, from some of my board members is, do we need to narrow our scope? And the thought that came to my mind was a newcomer family. The husband, similar to the story I told before, couldn't get a job in his field and is just struggling, you know, not making a lot of money, not satisfied, and their marriage is really suffering as a result of it. And all I could think about was, if that family came in And as we've learned more of this story and understand their struggles and how fragile their situation right now is, I turned to the donor, and I did the same with a couple of our board members. I said, would you be okay if our response was, would you like another pack of chicken? Of course they'd love another pack of chicken. But if that's all we did, if we heard their struggle and their heartbreak of what's happening, and we're like,
Chicken.
you would like another piece of chicken, it just doesn't seem to make sense. Now, I have to be very careful when I say that. Is I'm not trying to criticize any other organizations, just a food bank. Because if that's what they're focused on, that's fine. But we have this amazing facility. And, you know, when I started in 2013 and we were having some financial struggles, we really looked at what should we do and what are we able to do and how do we deliver enough value to the community and impact that it makes sense to have all of this cost. And we have this amazing facility that truly is a hub of care. That's our vision, is if someone is struggling with a need, can they show up here and we will find a way to connect them into the help they need. So we run some programs. We've brought partners like the school board in. We brought Halton Region, their public health nurses come in and run a nutrition program. But we also just as often will take people out and we'll connect them with housing. We'll connect them with Halton Community Legal. We'll connect them with the dentist if they need dental work and try to work to get them a deal or get it covered. Because the mission is not about our programs. The mission is to respond to people in need, and their needs are unique. So if you were to come in, we would sit down, we would find out what's happening. Usually what happens is that it starts off one thing, and over time, as the familiarity and the trust goes, it actually becomes deeper and there's more things. But then it's like, okay, let's figure out how we can help you and support you so that you're in a better spot, your family's in a better spot. And so that idea of being a hub of care and being sort of holistic or comprehensive care is really what our mission is about. And there aren't other organizations or really even in terms of the government that are focused that way, that are able to do that. So oftentimes people are the square pegs that aren't fitting in the round holes, and so they're struggling to get the support, where we can say, okay, we may not be able to give you that service, but we're going to help you find the service, connect into it, and we're going to support you in the journey. And so family care is a few things. We do agency fairs. We have other partners run programs here. We have our manager and our part-time caseworker that can help, really come alongside and direct people. But then we also have this partnership we call Neighbor Care Network, where we partner with the churches, and we said to the churches, all we want you to do is be a big brother or big sister to someone. We know, and we've seen it over and over, it doesn't matter education, doesn't matter what your history of employment is and level of responsibility. If you're in distress, and everyone responds different to different distresses, but if you're in a serious enough distress or crisis, usually people have a hard time thinking clearly. They have a hard time making decisions, and they're terrible at following through. And so usually the layers start to build. So what we do is we help identify the services and put a bit of an action plan together, and then the volunteer will come alongside and try to keep them moving. So I describe it very similar to what many of us have done with our kids many times. Is there's times when we encourage, you can do it, come on, let's go, and if they struggle, and it's like, okay, let's go, take them by the hand, you get them. Sometimes there's a little bit of a kick in the rear end, right? You're feeling sorry for yourself, the situation's terrible, but if you don't take action, it's not going to change. Come on, I'm here to help you. Let's get moving. Wow. And we have, from the food to the children's programs to some of these other things that we're connected into. We also started a debt program, so we've partnered with another organization. But what we found is people who could barely make their monthly costs then had some sort of emergency or some situation, occasionally just a real bad decision, and then they add debt, and then they add interest, and so now they're just falling farther behind every month. And so we can either help them through the debt process, and they negotiate, good deals negotiated, and they have to work for a year, 2 years to pay that off. Or if it's really bad, they go through bankruptcy. That's never the best option,
No.
but sometimes it's the only option. And, it's all about how do we get them to a better spot, a more stable spot. And it's amazing how even when people aren't ready to take action, sometimes there's a go around, right? They start and then they fall off, they disappear, and then they come back and it's a little bit worse and they fall off. It takes a few go rounds before they're actually ready to take action. But it's amazing how knowing that there's people here that will help them can relieve a lot of that stress. And in the end, they will come back and they know they're cared for and that they know there's help available. And sometimes there's situations where it's short-term gap where we can help you get to a spot where you can be stable, but in the month, 2 months, 3 months, before a child tax benefit comes or before you start a new job, they can't pay their rent and they're going to get an eviction notice. And then we've actually messaged out to the church community and said, we believe this family is going to be stable once they get to this point. We need to fill the gap of $200 or $400 a month rent so that they don't end up evicted. And so there's so many stories that have been life-changing because of the way the community has rallied around. And they rally around in part because they know there's a plan in place and people are working with them, and they're not going to come back every month with the same issue. So it's amazing. It's amazing to see how compassionate our community is, but people don't want to be ripped off. They don't want money to be used inappropriately. They want to know that there's a plan. They want to know that there's a chance of success. And then we found people have been extremely generous and really have wanted to help and make a difference for someone.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, 35 plus years as CPA, I certainly understand the debt part. I've seen so much over the course of my career, and the interesting thing is that when you add debt to the family issues, and then you add another health issue, another support issue in regard, and then what people don't realize is that, well, maybe they do realize it, it'd be difficult here, but they work 9 to 5. Most people work 10, 12 hours a day, and so there's not a lot of time to deal through all this gray area. You know what I mean? So understand there's a place to go where people can kick in their expertise, their services, their supports like you do. It's a lot. People feel relieved, And you mentioned earlier at what other agencies, not to be critical, they do one thing, but really we're so lucky. Here, this one community, Oakville, is an affluent community, but other communities too, that have all these agencies, and finding their niche, whether it's mental illness or addiction or food insecurity, and doing their thing. It's just you have a different approach, which is all-encompassing, which I really like, and so it's unique, right?
The navigating is so important, because if someone has, here we are in an affluent community, which magnifies the issue because of the cost of housing.
Absolutely.
But if someone has done okay their whole life and they're 50, and suddenly something goes sideways, lose a job, and they're extended, and all of a sudden they don't have enough money and they're struggling, they have no idea what services are available or how to connect in. And as an educated person, I'd like to think I'd be able to do searches and I'd be able to figure it out and I'd be able to navigate it, but likely I wouldn't be at my best at that point in time, and so I would struggle. But we have people that don't speak English very well, or don't have educations, or maybe just don't have that kind of creativity and problem solving. And so navigating the system and finding out who can help me and where do I go and how does this work together is really a challenge. And so that's part of what we're trying to offer is we can learn about it, the different services, we can learn how they fit, we can learn what paperwork, whatever they're going to need to take it there, to be able to get the support and really help make it less frustrating, make it easier to connect in, quicker to benefit. Like all of those pieces really, really add together to get greater outcomes, better outcomes. It's so important.
Yeah, but actually, when you touched on the point of education, but I mean, even if you're qualified in some area, you told me a story in the elevator, I think, the other day, is about the woman that was a PSW,
Yeah.
personal support worker. Maybe you could share that really quickly with us, because that's a fabulous story of how people can fall into that homelessness and housing issue very quickly. From one day you're good and next day, maybe you could share that story with our audience.
Yeah, happy to. So, I would just take one quick step back and say, I get asked the question all the time, is there really poverty in Oakville? It's such an affluent area. But again, housing puts such stress on people because it's just so expensive. The second thing is, about homeless is there really homeless here? And the first assumption, and I did the same thing, is I figure there's an addiction issue, right? Drugs or alcohol, or maybe it's a severe mental health issue, and that's why they're homeless. So we had a lady come by, someone told her to come by, and she dropped in, and it was interesting because she didn't expect to get any help, and our staff jumped right away and started working with her like within a half an hour. But she had been sleeping on the floor in the GO station in Burlington for over a month. She had called the shelter, she had called the region, she had called some others, she had numerous conversations, but she would still, that's where she was. Every night she would sleep on the floor in the GO station. So it turned out that she had been a personal support worker for many years. She was in her 60s. Typically she had 2 or 3 clients and would split the time over the course of the week. A family had asked her, I think the father was in his early 60s, so they were close to the same age, had some severe medical issues, not life-threatening, but needed care. And they really wanted her to look after him full-time. So she decided to. She liked the family. She really liked caring for this gentleman. She changed apartments, so she leased a new apartment and moved, thought it was a better place. Turned out the neighbors were up late and partying and making noise. When she asked them to turn down their music, they were quite abusive to her, and so she just wasn't comfortable there. So she gave her notice at that apartment and said, I'm leaving. They were able to rent it like that because there's a shortage. She rented another place. She hadn't moved yet. She was waiting for the move date. Well, here doesn't this gentleman who, again, serious health issues, but not life-threatening, ended up having a heart attack and passing away. Now she has no employment. Where she had signed the new lease, they ended up canceling it. I'm not exactly sure how it worked because they realized she didn't have a job, and so suddenly she has no apartment. And then when she went to rent another apartment, they ask for employment. She has no job. She can't get a new apartment. She ends up in shock, saying to us, I've never been on assistance. I'm the caregiver. How could this happen? Couldn't get anywhere. So thankfully, and some of this, I'm going to say it's a combination of luck and maybe some prayer, but our staff got on the phone, called the shelter and called the region, and within probably an hour and a half got her into the shelter. And the shelter programs, if you're needing housing, you move up the list, but then you get additional supports. So she got off the street, she could start to have showers again, she could start to get stabilized, she could start looking for another personal support job, and they were helping her find a place.
Wow.
So again, it's one of those cases where we would never expect someone like that to be homeless. And then think about how hard it would be to get out of that when you're not sleeping well, you're probably not clean, there's a whole bunch of pieces that come with not having anywhere to stay. Plus, I also think her confidence was shattered because it's hard to feel good about yourself when you end up in a situation like that. And I think it's natural for us to think, whether it's on the surface or deep down, what's wrong with me? I'm a failure. How could this happen? And the truth is that was a case where I don't think there was anything she could have done different. It was just a series of unfortunate events.
Well, you helped, and we need support, personal support workers, big time, right? So hopefully she's in an apartment now and employed.
Yeah.
Love it.
For the time when I lost my job, I couldn't provide for my family, for myself, needed a hot meal. For the time when everything fell apart, I got my diagnosis, struggled with depression and loneliness, I was lost. For the time when we lost our home, my mom worked 2 jobs, couldn't afford after-school care. For the time when I first came to Canada, needed help with my homework, to learn a new language, I needed a friend. For the time when I gained perspective, volunteered, mentored, listened, I became part of a community. For the time when I found help. For the times when you need us, Kerr Street Mission is there.
I trust our episodes 1 and 2 have illustrated that Kerr Street Mission is most definitely a gathering place and hub of care, offering help for the present and hope for the future. Kerr Street Mission is a well-deserved gem within the Oakville community. If you are a member of the Oakville community and you need any of the services Gary spoke about, reach out to Kerr Street Mission. Please watch our final episode on Kerr Street Mission as we continue our discussion with Gary O'Neill on the wonderful work they are doing with their core programs. All episodes of Cribwolf Talks can be seen on YouTube. If you are a Cogeco subscriber, check your TV Halton Community Calendar and Cable 14 Hamilton for our scheduled viewing. We love reading your emails and your social posts. So if you wish to talk about what great things you're doing in the community that improve the quality of life for those within our vulnerable population and wish to share your message on our program, send your request to info@cribwolftalks.com. Remember, there are people within our vulnerable population that need help. I'm Lino Farah. Thank you for watching Cribwolf Talks. Be well.